My name is Daniel. I am 24 years old, and returning home after 2 years in Cleveland for electrical engineering courses felt like rewinding a film I thought had already ended. The quiet neighborhood outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania greeted me with the same worn brick houses, the same oak trees turning amber and gold in the October air, the same corner store with the faded Coca-Cola sign that had been there since I was a kid. Everything looked smaller somehow, like the world had shrunk while I was away, or maybe I had just outgrown it without realizing. I told myself I was back for practical reasons. Save money, stack some cash, figure out what came next. The electrical engineering certificate opened doors, but I wasn't sure which ones I wanted to walk through yet. My student loans weren't going to pay themselves, and Cleveland's rent had eaten through my savings faster than I expected. So I came home, tail between my legs, pride swallowed, ready to restart in the place I'd been so eager to leave. I rented a cramped one-room apartment above Rosie's coffee shop on Maple Street. The smell of roasted beans seeped through the floorboards every morning at 5:30, which meant I never needed an alarm clock. The apartment was affordable, barely, and close to everything familiar. Most importantly, it was a 15-minute walk from my sister Maya's place. Maya had been my anchor since we were kids. 3 years older, fiercely protective, the kind of sister who would fight anyone who looked at me wrong but also call me out on my own nonsense without hesitation. She still lived in the house our parents left her when they moved to Florida, a 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and a backyard that backed up to the woods. Growing up, that house had been our kingdom. We'd spent countless afternoons in those woods, building forts, imagining adventures, making promises about the future that felt absolutely certain back then. The day after I signed my lease, Maya texted me. Porch took a beating over winter. You any good with your hands yet? Or did they just teach you theory? I could hear her teasing tone even through the screen. I grabbed my toolbox, the one Dad gave me before he left, and walked over through the familiar streets. The house looked the same. White paint peeling slightly near the gutters, black shutters that needed another coat. The porch swing still hanging at that slight angle it had always hung at. Maya met me at the door wearing ripped jeans and an old Steelers hoodie, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, grinning like I'd never left. Look at you, she said, looking me up and down. Cleveland didn't kill you after all. Almost did, I said, setting down my toolbox. Twice. She laughed and pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than either of us expected. When she stepped back, her eyes were a little wet, but she wiped them quickly and turned toward the porch. Come on, let me show you the damage. We spent the first hour assessing the situation. Several boards had rotted through from moisture, the railing was loose in 3 places, and the steps creaked ominously under weight. It was more work than a quick afternoon fix, but nothing I couldn't handle with time and materials. We fell into an easy rhythm, that comfortable silence you only get with someone who's known you your entire life. She handed me tools before I asked for them. I explained what I was doing, and she nodded like she understood, even though we both knew she didn't really care about the technical details. The sun climbed higher. My shirt started sticking to my back. Sweat rolled down my neck, and I was reaching for the water bottle I'd left on the porch railing when the front door opened and she walked out. Jessica. I hadn't seen her in years. Not since before I left for Cleveland, back when she and Maya were roommates at Penn State, back when she was just my sister's friend who showed up at holidays and summer barbecues, someone I was vaguely aware of but never really noticed. Or maybe I'd noticed, but she'd felt so far out of reach that I'd trained myself not to look too closely. Back then, Jessica had seemed untouchable in that effortless way some people carry themselves. Perfect style, perfect smile. The kind of woman everyone admired but kept at a respectful distance. I remembered her graduating a semester early, landing some impressive marketing job, driving a car that looked too nice for our neighborhood. She was always moving forward, always one step ahead, while I was still figuring out which direction forward even was. But now, standing on Maya's porch in bare feet, wearing a loose navy cardigan that fell off one shoulder and faded jeans with paint stains on them, she looked different. Softer maybe, more real. Her blonde hair was shorter than I remembered, falling just past her shoulders in waves that looked deliberately unstyled. No makeup that I could see, just freckles across her nose and cheeks that the sun had brought out. She held 2 mason jars filled with what looked like iced tea with mint leaves floating at the top. "Hey, stranger," she said, her voice quieter than I remembered. "Welcome home." She handed one jar to Maya, then stepped toward me with the other extended. Our fingers brushed when I took it, just for a second, barely a moment of contact, but something tightened in my chest like I'd missed a step going downstairs. Her eyes met mine, green with flecks of gold, and held there longer than casual. "Thanks," I managed, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. Maya drank her tea in 3 long gulps and headed back to the damaged railing. "This is worse than I thought," she called over her shoulder. "Might need to replace the whole section." Jessica stayed where she was, still watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. It felt like she was trying to figure something out, comparing something she remembered to something she was seeing now. I wiped my forehead with the hem of my shirt and reached for another board, suddenly very aware of her presence. "You filled out," she said, almost to herself, her head tilting slightly. I laughed, awkward and quick, unsure how to respond. "Hauling equipment and climbing poles will do that." She didn't laugh back. She kept studying me with that same intense, curious look, like she was seeing me for the first time. "You really changed," she said slowly. Then, so casually it almost didn't register at first, she added, "I'd definitely say yes if you asked me out now." My screwdriver slipped in my hand. I fumbled it, nearly dropped it, caught it at the last second. My heart kicked hard against my ribs, sudden and startling. Maya was on the other side of the porch, examining the railing joints, completely unaware of what had just been said. Jessica didn't smile or laugh or indicate in any way that she was joking. She just held my gaze for one long, waited moment, her expression serious and certain, like she'd already decided something important and was just letting me know. Then she turned and walked back inside, the screen door closing softly behind her. I stood there frozen, mason jar cold in one hand, screwdriver in the other, her words hanging in the air between us like smoke after a firework. My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened, whether I'd heard correctly, whether she'd actually meant it the way it sounded. The logical part of my brain said it was probably just friendly teasing, the kind of offhand comment people make without thinking. But the way she'd looked at me, the steadiness in her voice, the deliberate way she'd held eye contact, that didn't feel like teasing. Maya's voice cut through my thoughts. "You okay over there? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah," I said quickly, shaking my head. "Just hot. The sun." She gave me a suspicious look but didn't push it. We worked for another 2 hours, the afternoon blurring into a series of measurements and cuts and hammer strikes that I barely registered. My hands moved on autopilot while my mind replayed those few seconds over and over. Jessica didn't come back outside. I kept glancing at the windows, hoping and dreading that I might see her watching, but the glass only reflected the sky. When we finally called it quits for the day, Maya offered me a beer and we sat on the porch steps, surveying our progress. The sun was starting to dip, painting everything in that golden hour light that made even our tired neighborhood look beautiful. "Jessica's staying here for a while," Maya said casually, picking at the label on her beer bottle. "She quit her job a few months ago, some kind of corporate burnout thing. She's freelancing now, doing branding work for small businesses." "Oh," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "That's cool. Good for her." Maya glanced at me sideways. "You remember her, right? From college?" "Yeah, of course. You guys were roommates." "She's different now," Maya continued, still watching me carefully. "Quieter. I think the corporate world kind of chewed her up. She's trying to figure out what she actually wants instead of what looks good on paper." I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking our beers, watching the neighborhood cats prowl through the yards. Eventually, I made an excuse about being tired and walked home through the dimming streets, my toolbox heavy in my hand, my mind anything but quiet. That night, lying on my mattress on the floor of my tiny apartment, the sounds of the coffee shop closing up below me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of what I was feeling. It wasn't just attraction, though that was definitely there. It was something more unsettling. Recognition, maybe, like some part of me that had been dormant had suddenly woken up and was paying attention in a way I couldn't ignore. I told myself to forget it. Told myself she was just being friendly. Told myself that even if she'd meant it, getting involved with my sister's best friend was a complication I didn't need. I was here to save money and figure out my life, not to create messy situations that could blow up in my face. But as I finally drifted off to sleep, I kept seeing those green eyes, kept hearing that certain voice saying she'd say yes, kept feeling that brief touch of her fingers against mine. And deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I knew I was already in trouble. I told myself I wouldn't go back to Maya's place unless she specifically asked. I told myself I'd keep my distance, focus on my job at Patterson Electric, stack my paychecks, and stay out of complicated situations. I told myself a lot of things that first week back. I believed exactly none of them. Maya texted me 3 days later. Porch needs more work than we thought. You free this afternoon? I stared at my phone for a full minute, weighing my options, knowing I should make an excuse. Instead I typed back, be there at 2. The walk over felt longer than usual. I kept rehearsing what I'd say if Jessica was there, how I'd act normal, how I'd pretend that moment on the porch hadn't lodged itself in my chest like a splinter I couldn't dig out. But when I arrived, only Maya was home. We worked for 3 hours straight, replacing boards and reinforcing joints, and Jessica never appeared. I felt simultaneously relieved and disappointed, which told me exactly how much trouble I was actually in. This pattern continued. I'd show up, work on the porch, help with whatever other projects Maya had dreamed up, and Jessica would be conspicuously absent. Gone to a client meeting, out running errands, working from a coffee shop downtown, always somewhere else. I started to think maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, built it up into something it never was. Then, on the 6th day, everything changed. I arrived to find Maya rushing out the door, phone pressed to her ear, looking stressed. She covered the receiver with her hand. Emergency at work. Burst pipe in the office building. I have to go deal with it. Can you keep working? Jessica's inside if you need anything. She didn't wait for an answer, just sprinted to her car and drove off, leaving me standing in the driveway with my toolbox and a sudden spike of adrenaline. For a few minutes, I just worked, trying to focus on the task at hand. Measure twice, cut once. Keep your lines straight. Don't think about who's inside. Then the front door opened and Jessica stepped out carrying a tall glass of lemonade and a folding lawn chair. Maya abandoned you, she said, not quite a question. Work emergency, I confirmed, not looking up from the board I was measuring. Mind if I keep you company? She was already unfolding the chair in the shade of the big oak tree. I've been staring at a computer screen all morning. My eyes need a break. I couldn't exactly say no without being rude, so I nodded and went back to work. She settled into the chair with a sketch pad and pencil, her bare feet tucked under her, and just started drawing. The silence stretched between us, not awkward but charged with something I couldn't name. After about 20 minutes, I felt her watching me. When I glanced over, she didn't look away. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why'd you come back? Maya said you had job offers in Cleveland. I set down my drill and wiped my hands on my jeans. The offers weren't great. Entry-level stuff, long hours, barely enough to cover rent and loans. Figured I'd rather come home, save some money, and wait for something better. That's the practical answer, she said. What's the real one? I hadn't expected that. Most people accepted the practical answer and moved on. I sat back on my heels and really thought about it. I was lonely, I said finally. I thought moving away would make me feel like I was going somewhere, becoming someone. But mostly I just felt disconnected, like I was going through motions that were supposed to matter but didn't. She nodded slowly, her pencil moving across the page. I know that feeling. Maya said you quit your job. I did. She kept drawing, her eyes on the paper. I was working for this boutique marketing firm downtown. Great salary, impressive clients, the kind of job that looks perfect on the outside. But every morning I'd wake up with this weight on my chest, this dread about going in. They wanted me to be someone I wasn't. Aggressive, cutthroat, always selling, always performing. That doesn't sound like you, I said, then immediately wondered if I had any right to say what she was or wasn't like. But she smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. It's not. It took me way too long to admit that. She looked up at me then, really looked at me. You were always quiet, even when we were younger. You'd show up at parties and just observe, like you were taking notes on everyone else. I was shy, I admitted. Probably still am. I think you were just careful, paying attention. That's different than shy. Something in the way she said it made my chest tighten. We held eye contact for a moment too long, and I was the one who looked away first, reaching for another board. We fell into a rhythm after that. She'd show up most afternoons with that folding chair and her sketch pad, sometimes drawing, sometimes working on her laptop, sometimes just sitting there with a book. We talked in fragments, conversation threading through the work. She told me about the clients she was building brands for, small businesses run by people who actually cared about what they were doing. A bakery owned by a woman who'd survived cancer. A bookstore trying to compete with chains. A nonprofit helping kids learn to code. These are people who matter, she said one afternoon, her voice passionate in a way I hadn't heard before. They're not just trying to make money. They're trying to make something good. I told her about the electrical work I was doing, the houses I was rewiring, the satisfaction of making something function properly. There's something honest about it, I explained. When I'm done, the lights work or they don't. It's not subjective. It's just real. That's what I needed, she said quietly. Something real. The afternoon light was starting to slant golden through the trees when she set down her sketch pad and said, "Can I show you something?" I climbed down from the porch and walked over. She turned the pad toward me. It wasn't what I expected. Not a portrait or a landscape, but an interior design sketch. A living room filled with plants and natural light. Furniture that looked comfortable rather than expensive. Books everywhere. "This is what I actually want to do," she said. "Interior design. Creating spaces that feel like home. But I never had the courage to pursue it. Felt too soft. Not serious enough." "It looks serious to me," I said. "It looks like something people would actually want to live in." Her eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way that made my heart ache. "You think so?" "I know so." The moment stretched between us, and I realized we were standing very close. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. Close enough that if I moved just slightly forward. "Daniel," she said softly. "Yeah." When I said that thing last week, about saying yes if you asked me out, I wasn't joking. My breath caught. "Jessica." "I know it's complicated," she continued, her words coming faster now. "I know you just got back. I know Maya's your sister and I'm staying at her house and this could get messy. But I've been thinking about it all week and I keep coming back to the same thing. Life's too short to not say what you mean." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you showed up on that porch," she said. "I mean, you're the first person in a long time who's made me feel like I don't have to perform or pretend or be anything other than exactly who I am. I mean..." A car door slammed. We both jumped back, turning to see a black luxury sedan pulling into the driveway. The door opened and a man stepped out, tall and polished, wearing slacks and a button-down that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He had the kind of face that belonged in magazines, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry. He was holding an elaborate bouquet of red roses that must have cost a fortune. Jessica's entire posture changed. Her shoulders tensed. Her expression went neutral, almost blank. "Marcus," she said, and something in her voice made my stomach drop. He walked toward us with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. His smile bright and practiced. "Hey babe."
Surprise.
He barely glanced at me, dismissing me entirely, and moved to kiss her. She turned her head at the last second so his lips caught only the corner of her mouth. "What are you doing here?" "I told you I wasn't giving up," he said, holding out the roses. "We were good together, Jess. We can be good again." Marcus, we talked about this. We talked. I listened. And now I'm showing you I'm serious. He finally looked at me, a quick assessing glance that clearly found me lacking. Who's this? Daniel. He's Maya's brother. He's fixing the porch. The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, so diminishing, stung more than it should have. I wasn't sure what I'd expected her to say, but being reduced to Maya's brother who's fixing the porch felt like being erased. Cool, Marcus said dismissively, turning back to Jessica. Look, I made reservations at Monterey Bay, that place you love. 7 o'clock. We can talk properly, somewhere nice, without. He gestured vaguely at the porch, at me, at everything that apparently wasn't up to his standards. I don't think that's a good idea, Jessica started. Come on, Jess. Just dinner. Just conversation. If you still feel the same way after, I'll respect that. But give me a chance to show you I've changed. I couldn't watch anymore. I turned back to the porch, picked up my drill, and started working on a board that didn't need any work. Behind me, I heard their voices, low and intense. I couldn't make out words, but I could hear the tone. His persistent and smooth, hers tired and reluctant. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 5 minutes, I heard the car door close and the engine start. The sedan pulled away. I kept working, keeping my back turned, giving her space to come talk to me if she wanted to. She didn't. When I finally risked a glance over my shoulder, she was gone. The folding chair sat empty. The sketchpad lay abandoned in the grass. The roses were in a heap by the porch steps, still wrapped in their expensive paper. I worked for another hour in silence that felt heavy and wrong. When Maya came home, she found me putting away tools. Marcus was here, she said, no question in her voice. Yeah. And nothing. Not my business. She studied me with that older sister look that had always been able to see through my walls. Done? I should go, I said, closing my toolbox. Porch is coming along. Maybe another few days. I walked home through streets that had somehow gotten darker, even though the sun hadn't fully set. My apartment felt smaller than usual. I lay on my mattress and stared at the ceiling, replaying the whole interaction, trying to figure out what I was feeling. Jealousy, definitely. Disappointment, absolutely. But underneath all of that was something more complicated. Hope, maybe, because she'd almost said it. She'd been about to say she felt the same way I did. And she turned her face when Marcus tried to kiss her. That had to mean something. Or maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry about today. He doesn't listen. I told him it was over, but he doesn't hear it. This is Jessica, by the way. Got your number from Maya. I hope that's okay. My heart hammered. I read the message 3 times before typing back. It's okay. You don't have to explain. I want to. Can we talk? Tomorrow, maybe? Yeah, tomorrow. I set my phone down and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Whatever was happening between us, it wasn't over. It was complicated, messy, probably a terrible idea. But as I lay there in the dark, I couldn't stop the smile spreading across my face. Because sometimes the messiest things were also the most worth it. The next day dragged like wet cement. Every hour at Patterson Electric felt like 3. I was running conduit through a commercial building downtown. Mindless, repetitive work that should have been easy, but I kept losing track of measurements, dropping tools, getting tangled in my own thoughts. My crew foreman, a grizzled guy named Lou who'd been doing this for 30 years, finally pulled me aside around lunch. Whatever's got you distracted, sort it out before you electrocute yourself, he said, not unkindly. I don't need that paperwork. I nodded, grabbed my lunch, and sat in my truck scrolling through my phone. Jessica had texted again that morning. Free after 4? There's a park near your place. The one with the duck pond. I'd replied immediately, I'll be there. Now, watching the clock tick toward quitting time, I felt like a teenager waiting for prom. Nervous energy coursed through me, equal parts anticipation and dread. What if she wanted to tell me she was getting back together with Marcus? What if last night's dinner had gone well? What if I'd completely misread everything? 3:45, Lou told me to just go. You're useless today anyway. I drove home, showered fast, changed into clean jeans and a flannel shirt that didn't smell like sweat and electrical wire, and walked to Riverside Park. It was one of those perfect October afternoons where the air had just enough chill to feel alive, and the leaves were at peak color, burning orange and red against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Jessica was already there, sitting on a bench overlooking the pond where a family of ducks paddled in lazy circles. She'd pulled her hair into a loose ponytail, and she wore a burgundy sweater that made her look softer somehow, more vulnerable. When she saw me approaching, she stood up, and for a second neither of us knew what to do. Hug? Handshake? Stand awkwardly? She solved it by gesturing to the bench. Thanks for coming. Of course. I sat, leaving space between us that felt both respectful and cowardly. For a moment we just watched the ducks. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. I need to tell you about Marcus. You deserve to know the whole story. You don't owe me anything, I started. But she shook her head. I do, actually, because I said something to you yesterday, something real, and then he showed up and made everything complicated and I didn't handle it well. So let me explain. She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them, making herself smaller. I met Marcus 2 years ago at a networking event. He worked in finance, made ridiculous money, drove that stupid car. He was everything I thought I was supposed to want. Successful, confident, ambitious. We dated for 8 months, and from the outside it probably looked perfect. He'd take me to expensive restaurants, surprise me with jewelry, introduce me to important people. But, I prompted gently, but he wanted a trophy, not a partner, she said, bitterness creeping into her voice. He loved the idea of me, the successful marketing executive with the right background and the right connections. But he didn't actually know me, didn't care about what I actually wanted or felt. When I told him I was thinking about leaving my job, he laughed, said I was being emotional, that I'd regret throwing away my career for some artistic fantasy. She paused, her jaw tightening. The final straw was when I got offered a promotion. Big raise, more responsibility, but it would have meant 60-hour weeks and constant travel. I told him I was going to turn it down because it wasn't what I wanted. And he said, she laughed without humor. He said, if you're not going to take your career seriously, what's the point of us? Jesus, I muttered. I broke up with him that night. Quit my job 2 weeks later. He's been trying to get me back ever since, showing up with flowers, sending gifts, making promises about how he's changed. But he hasn't. Last night at dinner, he spent 2 hours telling me about all the ways he could help my little design hobby become a real business. Like I needed his permission or validation. She turned to look at me then, and her eyes were fierce. I didn't go to that dinner because I wanted to. I went because I thought I owed him closure, a final conversation where I could make him understand it was really over. I should have just told him to leave yesterday. I'm sorry you had to see that. You don't have to apologize, I said. He's your past. You get to deal with it however you need to. He's not just my past, she said carefully. He represents everything I was trying to be and failing at. The perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect life that looked amazing but felt empty. And then you showed up. My heart started hammering. Jessica, let me finish, she said quickly. When I saw you on that porch last week, I barely recognized you. You weren't that quiet college kid anymore. You'd grown into yourself. And when you talked about coming home, about feeling lonely, about wanting something real, Daniel, I felt seen in a way I haven't felt in years. You weren't impressed by my resume or my connections or any of that surface stuff. You just talked to me like I was a person worth knowing. She shifted closer, closing the gap between us. That thing I said about saying yes if you asked me out, I meant it. I still mean it. But I need you to understand what you'd be getting into. My life is a mess right now. I'm freelancing from Maya's spare room. My ex won't take no for answer. I'm trying to figure out who I am outside of other people's expectations. It's not going to be simple. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the freckles scattered across her nose, the way afternoon light caught in her hair, the vulnerability and strength mixed in her expression. And I thought about how she'd made me feel this past week. Not like I needed to be more or different or better. Just like I was enough exactly as I was. I don't want simple, I said. Simple is boring. Simple is safe. And I've been playing it safe my whole life, letting other people define what I should want, where I should go, who I should be. But you make me want to take a risk. Yeah. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yeah. I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. My hand found hers, and our fingers interlaced like they'd been designed to fit together. I know this is complicated. You're my sister's best friend. You're living in her house. This could blow up spectacularly and make everything awkward. It could, she agreed. But I can't stop thinking about you, I continued. I can't stop wanting to know everything about you. What you're designing, what you're dreaming about, what makes you laugh. I can't stop imagining what it would be like to actually be with you, not just fixing a porch while you sit nearby. She squeezed my hand, tears gathering in her eyes. Is this a mistake? She asked, her voice trembling. Are we being stupid? I thought about it, really thought about it. About Maya, about timing, about all the logical reasons this was a bad idea. Then I thought about how Jessica looked at me, how she made me feel, how rare it was to meet someone who saw you completely and didn't look away. Not if it's love, I answered, the words coming out certain and clear. And I think this could be. Her breath caught. Daniel, I'm not saying it is yet, I clarified quickly. I'm not trying to rush anything or make this bigger than it is right now. But I feel something when I'm with you that I've never felt before. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And if that's not the beginning of love, I don't know what is. She was crying now, tears sliding down her cheeks, but she was smiling too. I feel it too. That's what scares me so much. It's too fast, too intense, too real, I suggested. Yeah, real. We sat there holding hands, both of us crying a little, both of us smiling like idiots. Around us, the park continued its evening routine. Joggers passing by, dogs chasing tennis balls, kids shrieking on the playground. But we were in our own bubble, this fragile, perfect moment where everything felt possible. So what do we do now? She asked. We take it one day at a time, I said. We're honest with each other. We're honest with Maya. We don't hide this, but we also don't put pressure on it to be something it's not ready to be yet. We just see where it goes. She nodded slowly. I can do that. And when Marcus shows up again, because he probably will, you tell him clearly that you're seeing someone, that it's serious, that he needs to move on. I will, she promised. No more closure dinners or giving him chances or being polite when I should be firm. This matters more. Okay then. I stood up, pulling her to her feet, not letting go of her hand. Can I walk you home? I'd like that. We walked slowly through the park as the sun began its descent, painting everything in gold and amber. We talked about small things, her current design project for a yoga studio, my plans to eventually start my own electrical contracting business, whether the Steelers would make the playoffs. Normal conversation that felt extraordinary because of who we were having it with. When we reached Maya's house, we stood on the sidewalk, both hesitant to let the evening end. The porch I'd been working on looked almost finished now, solid and safe, no longer creaking or threatening to collapse. I should probably tell Maya, Jessica said, about us, tonight. Want me to be there? No, she said quickly, then softer. Let me talk to her first, sister to sister. She deserves to hear it from me. Okay. Text me after? Let me know how it goes. I will. She stepped closer, rising up on her toes, and pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. It lasted only a second, barely contact at all, but it sent electricity through my entire body. Thank you, Daniel, for seeing me, for taking this risk. Thank you for being worth the risk. She smiled, squeezed my hand one last time, and walked up the path to the house. I watched her go, watched her pause at the door to look back at me once more, watched her disappear inside. Then I walked home through streets that felt different somehow. Brighter, more alive, full of possibility. My phone buzzed an hour later. Jessica. She knows. She has opinions. But she's not mad. Wants to talk to you tomorrow. Fair warning. Prepare for interrogation. I laughed and typed back, worth it, because it was. Whatever happened next. Maya's protective questioning, Marcus's inevitable persistence, the complications of dating my sister's best friend. It would all be worth it for a chance at something real with someone who saw me, truly saw me, and chose to stay anyway. I fell asleep that night with my phone clutched in my hand, a smile on my face, and hope blooming in my chest like spring after a long winter. Maya's text arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. Come over. Now, bring coffee. I stopped at Rosie's, got 2 large black coffees and a box of the maple donuts Maya loved, and walked to her house with my stomach in knots. The porch looked almost finished, just needed a final coat of sealant and it would be perfect. I knocked rather than walking in, which felt appropriate given the circumstances. Maya opened the door still in her pajamas, her expression unreadable. Kitchen. Now. I followed her inside, setting the coffee and donuts on the table. She took her cup, sipped it, then fixed me with that older sister stare that had been intimidating me since childhood. So, she said, Jessica. Yeah, I replied, meeting her eyes. Jessica, my best friend, the woman living in my spare room, the person I've known for over a decade. She wasn't angry exactly, but her voice had an edge. And you thought it was a good idea to pursue her? Why exactly? I'd prepared for this, rehearsed answers in my head all night. But sitting across from Maya, all the practice speeches evaporated. Because I couldn't not, I said simply. Because when I'm with her, I feel like myself in a way I've never felt before. Because she's the first person who's made me want to risk something real instead of playing it safe. Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying me. She told me about Marcus, about him showing up, about their history. Did she tell you all of it? About how he manipulated her, made her question her own judgment, spent months convincing her she was overreacting when she wanted to leave. She told me enough, I said. He's not a good guy. No, he's not. And Jessica is finally getting her life back together after letting him control so much of it. She's vulnerable right now, Dan. She's rebuilding herself. And if you hurt her, if this is just some rebound thing for you, or you get bored, or you decide it's too complicated. It's not, I interrupted firmly. Maya, I know you're protecting her. That's what you do. You protect the people you love. But I'm not Marcus. I'm not going to manipulate her or control her or make her feel small. I see her, really see her, and I think she's incredible exactly as she is. You barely know her, Maya countered. I know she takes her coffee with too much cream and sketches when she's anxious. I know she lights up when she talks about interior design and gets this crease between her eyebrows when she's concentrating. I know she's brave and honest and trying so hard to figure out who she is outside of other people's expectations. And yeah, maybe I don't know her favorite movie or what she wanted to be when she was 8, but I want to learn all of that. I want to know everything. Maya's expression softened slightly. She grabbed a donut, took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. She said almost the exact same thing about you last night, that you see her in a way no one else does. She sees me too, I said quietly. That's what makes this different. Maya sighed, a long exhale that seemed to carry months of worry and protection and love for her friend. Okay, here's the deal. You can date her. You can pursue whatever this is. But you do it right. No games, no ghosting, no half-assing it because it gets complicated. Jessica deserves someone all in, not someone with one foot out the door. I'm all in, I promised. I know it's fast. I know it seems crazy, but I'm all in. Good, because if you hurt her, I will make your life a living hell. I love you, little brother, but she's my best friend. She comes first. I wouldn't expect anything less. Maya smiled then, really smiled. Also, if this works out, family dinners are going to be weird. Just preparing you for that. I laughed, relief flooding through me. I can handle weird. We talked for another hour. Maya grilling me on my intentions, my plans, my understanding of what Jessica was going through. It felt like a job interview and a therapy session combined, but I answered every question honestly. Finally, Maya stood up. She's still asleep. Spare room, second door on the left. Go wake her up and take her to breakfast. Somewhere nice. And Daniel, she grabbed my shoulder. Don't screw this up. I won't. I climbed the stairs quietly, my heart hammering. The spare room door was slightly ajar, morning light filtering through the curtains. Jessica was curled up in bed, her blonde hair spread across the pillow, one arm tucked under her cheek. She looked peaceful, younger somehow, and I stood there for a moment just watching her breathe, feeling the weight and wonder of what we were starting. Then I knocked softly. Jessica! She stirred, eyes fluttering open, confused at first. Then she saw me and smiled, that genuine smile that made my chest tight. Daniel, what are you doing here? Maya gave me permission to take you to breakfast. Somewhere nice. Will you come with me? She sat up, hair messy, wearing an oversized t-shirt, looking absolutely beautiful. She didn't threaten to kill you? Oh, she definitely threatened to kill me, but she also gave her blessing. So now I'm asking, Jessica, will you go on a real date with me? An official, no porch fixing, no interruptions, just us date. Her smile widened. Yes, absolutely yes. I took her to this place called Willow Creek, a breakfast spot tucked into the hills outside Pittsburgh with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. We sat by the window, ordered ridiculous stacks of pancakes and strong coffee, and talked for 3 hours straight. She told me about growing up in suburban Philadelphia, about her parents who were still married and boring in the best way, about her younger brother who was teaching English in South Korea. I told her about Maya raising me after our parents checked out emotionally, about learning electrical work from our dad before he left, about the loneliness of Cleveland that had nothing to do with the city and everything to do with not knowing who I was. I spent 2 years trying to become someone impressive, I said, cutting into my pancakes. Someone with a plan, with ambition, with direction. But it was all performance. Coming home felt like failure at first, but now I think it was actually the first honest choice I'd made in years. That's how I felt leaving Marcus and my job, Jessica said. Like I was giving up, admitting defeat. But really I was just finally listening to myself instead of everyone else's opinions. After breakfast, we drove to an art supply store where Jessica spent an hour picking out materials, sketch pads, colored pencils, fabric swatches, paint samples. She was designing a nursery for a client expecting twins, and watching her work through color schemes and layout options, her face animated with passion and creativity, I fell a little deeper. You're staring, she said, not looking up from the paint swatches. Can't help it. You're in your element. She glanced at me, blushing. It's just paint. It's not just paint. It's you doing what you were meant to do. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a rhythm that felt both new and inevitable. I'd finish work and drive straight to Maya's, where Jessica would be waiting on the now completed porch with 2 glasses of lemonade. We'd sit there for hours, talking, laughing, learning each other's patterns and quirks. She'd show me design mock-ups and I'd give feedback, probably terrible feedback, but she'd listen like my opinion mattered. I'd tell her about difficult jobs and she'd ask questions that showed she was actually paying attention. We went on dates, real dates, art galleries where she'd explain composition and color theory, hardware stores where I'd geek out over tools and she'd pretend to understand voltage ratings, a Steelers game where we both yelled ourselves hoarse, simple movie nights at her place where we'd fall asleep on the couch tangled together, the movie forgotten. Marcus showed up twice more. Once outside a coffee shop where Jessica was meeting a client, flowers in hand and apologies on his lips. She told him clearly, firmly, that she was seeing someone and he needed to stop. He didn't take it well, made a scene, called her ungrateful. I happened to be picking her up and watched from my truck as she stood her ground, refused to be intimidated, walked away with her head high. She got in my truck shaking but determined. That's done, she said. He's really done. The second time, he showed up at Maya's house late at night, drunk and belligerent. Maya called the cops while Jessica and I stayed inside, her pressed against my chest, my arms wrapped around her. The police escorted him away with a warning about harassment. She cried after, not from fear but from anger that he'd made her feel unsafe. I gave him 2 years, she sobbed. 2 years of my life trying to be what he wanted. And he can't even respect a simple no. He's gone now, I murmured into her hair. You never have to deal with him again. After that, Marcus finally seemed to accept reality. The flowers stopped coming. The text ceased. Jessica could breathe easier, move forward without looking over her shoulder. 3 months after that first conversation on the park bench, Jessica got her first major client. A boutique hotel downtown needed a complete interior redesign. The owner had seen her work in the yoga studio and been impressed. It was the kind of project that could launch her career, establish her reputation, prove that leaving corporate marketing hadn't been a mistake. She was terrified. What if I mess it up? What if they hate everything I design? What if I'm not ready for something this big? Then you'll learn and do better next time, I said. But you won't mess it up. You're brilliant at this, Jessica. Trust yourself. I helped however I could, taking reference photos, moving furniture samples, bringing her coffee during late-night design sessions. The night before her big presentation to the hotel's ownership group, she was a wreck, pacing Maya's living room, second-guessing every choice. Come here, I said, pulling her down onto the couch beside me. Look at me. She did, her green eyes wide with anxiety. You are talented. You are prepared. You are exactly the designer they need. And no matter what happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you for taking this chance. What if they say no? Then we'll get drunk and eat ice cream and you'll find another client. But they're not going to say no. They didn't say no. They loved her designs, hired her on the spot, gave her complete creative control. She called me from her car, crying and laughing simultaneously, barely coherent with joy and relief. They said yes. Daniel, they said yes to everything. I told you, I said, grinning so wide my face hurt. That night, we celebrated with Maya and a few close friends. But later, after everyone left, Jessica and I sat on her porch. Our porch, really the one I'd spent weeks rebuilding, and she took my hand. I need to tell you something, she said. My stomach dropped. Okay, these past 3 months have been the best of my life. Not because everything's been perfect, it hasn't, but because I've been becoming who I actually am instead of who I thought I should be. And you've been beside me through all of it, cheering me on, catching me when I stumbled, believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Jessica, I love you, she said, the words tumbling out fast, like she'd been holding them back and couldn't anymore. I'm in love with you, Daniel. I know it's only been 3 months and maybe it's too soon to say it, but it's true and I'm tired of not saying true things. You asked me that day in the park if this was a mistake, and you said not if it's love. Well, it's love. For me, it's definitely love. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel this overwhelming surge of rightness, of certainty, of this is it, this is what everyone talks about. I love you too, I said, and saying it out loud felt like jumping off a cliff and discovering I could fly. I've loved you since that first day on this porch, maybe before that, maybe since some moment I didn't even recognize at the time. But I love you now, Jessica. I love your passion and your courage and how you make me want to be braver. I love how you see me, really see me, and choose me anyway. She kissed me then, really kissed me for the first time, and it was everything first kisses are supposed to be. Nervous and certain, gentle and intense, perfect and imperfect all at once. When we pulled apart, both of us were crying and laughing, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. So what now? She whispered. Now we keep going, I said. One day at a time, one choice at a time, building something real together. No performances, no pretending. Just us. Just us, she echoed, smiling. I like the sound of that. We sat there long after the streetlights came on, wrapped in each other, talking about dreams and plans and possibilities. She wanted to grow her design business, maybe hire an assistant eventually, create spaces that felt like home for people who'd forgotten what home felt like. I wanted to start my own electrical contracting company, be my own boss, build something I could be proud of. We'll figure it out together, she said. Together, I agreed. And as I walked home that night through familiar streets that finally felt like where I belonged, I thought about how sometimes the biggest risks turn into the greatest rewards. How sometimes coming home isn't about giving up, but about finding yourself. How sometimes the person you're meant to love shows up exactly when you're ready to be seen. Jessica had asked if we were making a mistake. I'd answered, not if it's love. And I'd been right. This wasn't a mistake. It was the most correct, most true, most real thing I'd ever done. It was love. And it was just beginning.